The next section of the psychodynamic approach is looking at Freud's psychosexual stages of development. And Freud said that all of us go through these psychosexual stages of development, and what happens in each age phase, each stage, will actually impact on our behaviour later on as adults. So there are 5 psychosexual stages of development called the oral, anal, phallic, latency and genital stages. And you can see on this slide the ages that they are: oral 0 to about 2 years, anal stage 2 to 3, phallic 3 to about 7, latency 7 to about 11, and genital stage about 11 plus ages. And the mnemonic to help you remember this is old age pensioners lack genitals. So the first stage, the oral stage of development, Freud said that when we're little babies, we just like to put things in our mouths, we like to suck things, that's how we make sense of the world, and we are completely oral. That's all we do really. So from age about 0 to about 1.5, something like that, we are completely oral. And Freud said that if anything traumatic happens to us in that oral stage of development, then we get stuck, and he calls it fixation. We get fixated at the oral stage of development, and so as an adult we might have an oral personality. So that means engaging in behaviours that are particularly oral, like perhaps eating too much or drinking too much or smoking or sucking your thumb or biting your fingernails or something like that. So if you are orally fixated, Freud says that you would have an oral personality as an adult. The second stage of development is called the anal stage, and it's around the ages 2 to 3, so usually when children potty train. And Freud said at this stage children are completely obsessed with poo and going for a poo, and that's what's on their mind. And if a parent is overly controlling about potty training, then that is going to end up with a child having an anally retentive personality as an adult. So when they say an anal personality, it means that you are overly controlling as an adult. So it might be that you have to have your alarm clock on it set at very specific times. Like you'd never have an alarm set for 7:11 a.m. You would have like 7 a.m. or 7:15 a.m. Because you want to control everything very well, to the nth degree, I suppose. People who are anally retentive are often called tight-fisted with money as well. So they want to hold on to everything. They want to hold on and control everything that's going on, including money. So never go buy around with someone who's got an anal personality, because you'll never get one back. That's my top tip for the day. The next stage of development, and you need to hold on to your hats for this one because it's really weird. It's called the phallic stage of development, and it concerns something called the Oedipus and Electra complex. So in Greek mythology, Oedipus was someone who accidentally fell in love with his own mother and didn't realise it was his mother, but fell madly in love with her. And I don't know the mythology, I think might have had a relationship, probably ended in tragedy, knowing Greek mythology. So Freud took the word Oedipus because he believes that from the age of around 3 to 6, children go through the phallic stage of development where they fall in love with their opposite sex parent, but they can't have their opposite sex parent, and so therefore they hate their same-sex parent because they get to have their opposite-sex parent. But instead of like displaying that anger, they identify with their same-sex parent so they can experience their opposite-sex parent vicariously. So we probably need to unravel all of that. So if it was me, so I'm female, Freud would say that when I was a little girl, aged 3 to 6, I would have fallen madly in love with my dad and wanted to have him and couldn't, and would feel really jealous of my mum, but I would have identified with my mum so that I could have my dad vicariously. So when we say vicariously, we're talking, it's where you experience something through somebody else. So you know when you get a little girl on stage who's about 4 and she's like trying to tap dance, doesn't really care, and the mother's at the side of the stage going, oh, she loves it, she loves it. Who is it who really loves it? It's the mother, isn't it? The mother loves it. So the mother is experiencing being on stage through the child. That is a vicarious experience. You experience something through someone else. So go back to me being a little child, and apparently, according to Freud, falling in love with my dad. I would identify with my mother because I could then vicariously experience having my dad through my mum. And so that was Freud's explanation for why little girls might identify with their mothers and be like them, and little boys who fall in love with their mothers identify with their fathers to have the mother through the father. Yes, it's completely crazy. You make up your own mind on this, whether you want to believe Freud on this one. So the things that you need to remember from this are that if Freud said that if you don't resolve this Oedipus-Electra complex, so Oedipus is where the little boy falls in love with the mother, Electra is where the little girl falls in love with the father, and Freud said if you don't resolve this complex it could lead to homosexuality. I don't buy that at all, but that's what Freud said. And yeah, so that is the phallic stage of development. And next stage of development, let's get over the Oedipus-Electra, is the latency stage. So that's age around 6 or 7 to about 11 or 12. And so Freud says at this stage the children repress all the memories from before, the previous stages, which is why he says people don't remember an awful lot about their childhood. Again, you don't have to agree with him. And yeah, so at this stage you are meant to be just kind of enjoying childhood and life. Freud says that if you don't, you could become fixated in the latency stage. And I always think about like child stars like Michael Jackson. He was forced to be kind of adult and a performer when he was at a time in childhood where he should have been enjoying, he was in latency, he should have been enjoying childhood. And so Michael Jackson obviously has now passed away, but when he was alive as an adult, he had like a theme park in his garden, which was a very childlike thing to have. He had a lot of accusations of child molestation. He was never convicted of it, but he certainly seemed to have inappropriate relationships with children. As an adult, you can, be a fantastic role model to children and enjoy each other's company, but you're still the adult. You're not actually engaging with the child on a child-to-child level. You are the adult. Whereas Michael Jackson didn't seem to have, he had very blurred boundaries according to what is in the press. So that's the latency stage, and then the final stage is the genital stage. So this happens around age 11, 12. Freud said it's when we hit puberty and we become obsessed with our genitals, and then we're obsessed with them forever. Freud was really kind of big into sex, as you might be able to tell. And at this stage of development, it leads us on to the rest of our lives. It leads us to sexual intercourse and the beginnings of adult life. And if somebody became fixated at the genital stage, so something traumatic happened around that time of puberty, then Freud would say perhaps they would have inappropriate sexual behaviours as adults. Perhaps they might be a sexual criminal or a rapist or something like that. So that's Freud's psychosexual stages of development, and what happens during those stages, Freud says we all go through it, and what happens can lead into our unconscious, which you would have seen in the previous video, and affect our behaviour later as adults.